Clive Davis, with his brilliance, no ego attached, goes, boom, let's do the new single. And he starts writing letters to the radio people.
I wrote a personal letter, which I had never done before, to radio programmers of every genre.
Start your day the easy way.
I said, look, I've given you a lot of good music by now, and I need a favor here. Play the record.
3:23. This is how.
Finally, one station, KMEL, Camel, puts it on, and it's 4 p.m, so it's drive time. This is a big deal. Their phones light up. We love it. This song's beautiful. Why don't you play more songs like that? We really like that. Who is that? I never heard a sound like that before. It's the demographic they're looking for. I guess it's 25 to 35-year-old women. So he calls his contemporary in Chicago at their station. And he calls Detroit, and they call Atlanta, and they call Miami, and they call Houston. And all of a sudden, these guys are talking and saying, hey, we don't know why, but this instrumental is working. And it becomes a huge national hit song. When I came into the scene, I created maybe a new sound. You know, you can call it what you want, but you could call it a new sound of jazz, a new jazz sound that appealed to a lot of people. And I don't think a lot of people can say that they created a sound of music, and I think I did. And then people decided there should be a whole radio format like my music.
Welcome to the birth of Philadelphia's newest radio station, WJJZ 106.1 FM. We're proud to present a music format that's never been showcased here before. We call it smooth jazz. In our debut hour, we'll hear Champagne from Kenny G.
So I became like this face of this sound, and they decided to call it smooth jazz, because if they called it jazz, it was going to turn people away.
In the late 80s, the ratings game was very competitive. So everybody was doing research. We were market researchers, and we really let the listeners take over the format. We would come in and get at least 100 people, and we would run hooks of songs by them. They had a little dial in their hand, and if they liked it, what do you do when you like a song? You turn it up, like the volume. So they would just turn it up. And they could go all the way to 100 if they loved the song. We would watch these lines go up and down. And then Kenny G would come on right up to the top, 80, everybody loved it. 9 out of the top 15 songs would be Kenny G songs, out of like 650 songs that we researched. And then we would say, just tell us what words pop to mind. And almost everybody would say, it's jazz, but... And I still remember this woman's face. I can see it as clear as day. She's thinking, she says, it's jazz. She said, it's smooth jazz. It was almost like it just came to her like a lightning bolt. And we were all like, that's it, you know, I mean, that's got to be it. WNUA in Chicago was the first station in the country to use the term smooth jazz. You know, it later was adopted in a lot of places where we were consulting.
You're a bit too old for rock and roll, and classical music for you might be a little cerebral, and jazz is a little esoteric, but you want to be part of what's going on in music. What's for me?
I listen to it at work. Actually, I listen to it all the time. It fits in perfectly with everything I do.
I think I perform better. I hope my bosses say that.
I've never heard music.
This format got a lot of traction in offices. It was something that everybody could agree on in the office. No one was going to be offended by anything that you hear. It was never too loud or rowdy, but it also had enough tempo to keep it interesting, to have you nod your head a little bit.
The key was to make it palatable for a big tent. There are certain people that love smooth jazz that would never listen to jazz. And we used to hear this in focus groups. I didn't really know I liked jazz, but I like this.
In the 1980s and the 1990s, traditional jazz had been quite marginalized economically. and the opportunities for jazz musicians were dwindling. But at the same time, you have someone named Kenny G and some other musicians too that were playing in this that were being extremely successful financially, and they were using that four-letter word jazz. He was having a huge impact on society in terms of defining what jazz is, even though within the jazz community, people were looking at his music with disdain and really distancing themselves from what he was doing.
People sometimes legitimately ask, why do jazz musicians, why are they so irritated by Kenny G? And I was thinking about this, and the Harlem Globetrotters are a basketball team that's existed for decades. And they do not play competitive basketball. They are a group of entertainers, and they spin the basketball on their finger, and they do trick shots, and they clown around. I would say that most players in the NBA love the Globetrotters. But imagine a world in which legitimate competitive basketball is not popular, and LeBron James and Michael Jordan in his day, they worked their whole lives to be great basketball players. And now the only way they can afford the rent on their apartment is to part-time be like waiters. Imagine how they would feel about the Harlem Globetrotters spinning the ball on their finger and making a lot of money from it. And I think that's how jazz musicians feel about Kenny G. Every single jazz saxophone player can do circular breathing. And every player in the NBA can spin the ball on their finger and have it roll across their shoulders. They can all do it because it's fun and they do it, but it's not basketball.